You're listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast, where development industry insight meet mindset with Trafalgar CEO Joe Aboud. Join one of the property industry's most free thinkers as he explores the path to success and contentment.
Hi, my name is Joe Aboud and welcome to this episode of Developmental. A quick shout out to all our listeners out there, and we thank you for all your support and the great feedback we're getting from all corners of the globe. I want to ask our listeners a question. Have you ever wanted to make $1 million? What about being able to give away $1 million? Well, our next guest says that as a young architect student, making ends meet working as a kitchen hand for 10 hours a day, he had this wild dream. It was his idea of how he could give back and do good. This deep desire would in fact become the foundation of his life's work. Years later, he is now at the helm as founder and co-owner of the Crown Group, one of Australia's largest private property groups, already making waves on the world stage. I'm excited to sit down and have this conversation with Iwan Sunito and learn a little bit more about his life journey. I have a feeling we're going to get some great lessons and insights from this discussion. Welcome, Iwan.
Thank you, Joe.
How you going?
I'm really good.
Look, I'm really excited about this sit down because I think this conversation with you is just gonna go down really, really well today. I'm going to learn about your journey. We're going to learn about a lot of the similarities that you and I sort of share, and hopefully everybody listening will be able to really take advantage of some of the great lessons and insights, from this discussion. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you too. I've been fascinated following your life journey and really listening to about what you do and what you give back to the community, Joe. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, look, giving back is really close to my heart as we spoke. And if you remember, in preparing for this interview, you and I had a really good initial chat. I'm actually rather sad that I didn't actually press record at the time. That would have been a special episode in itself. But look, I think it's really clear, as I just mentioned, you and I share some very similar values, similar experiences, having that split-second moment where inspiration strikes us, And if you think about that, I actually want to touch on that phenomena in itself, that, we're going to start talking about, trying to work on visions and planning for the future and a very clear path to success. But the phenomena that really strikes me is that split second, that moment. Talk to me about your recollection of that moment.
The funny thing is that I've always kind of, I grew up in the small island it's actually not a small island, but a small village called Pangkalan Bun, or part of the Borneo. So not many of you have heard it. I mean, it's actually made famous because of the Canadian doctor by the name of Dr. Birute Gladikas, and she went all the way there to rehabilitate orangutan. The place was actually famous because Julia Roberts, the star of that pretty woman, visited there, and Tony Blair also visited my hometown. But that's not when I was growing up at that time.
So that movie is not about you?
No, it was more about Julia Roberts. But it was really, that's a place that I grew up. And then later on, of course, I went to Surabaya, studying in Surabaya, and then I failed in one of the year, and then Dad sent me to come to Sydney, and that's how the whole journey in Sydney. And I'm probably more Aussie than being Indonesian myself, right? So I lived more than half of my life in Australia, so I'm a fair dinkum Aussie by now, right? But it's funny how you grew up in thinking that you're a failure, thinking that you're not good enough.
Did someone tell you that though?
Well,
did someone constantly remind you of that?
Oftentimes that it's yourself telling you that you're not good. Sometimes it's the results shows that you're not good. Your academic results says you're not good, and your friend says you're not good. And oftentimes it's not planned or it's not intentional. When somebody asks mom and dad, who is the smarter one in the family? And they always in an honest way, they said, the older one is smarter than you. And that kind of word somehow stay with you for many, many years.
Does that motivate? That motivated you, right?
Well, no, I was the second youngest, and my brother was smarter in that time.
Right.
Of course, I kind of did better later on academically.
Okay.
But that word, and this is where the power of word in people's life, that you got to be almost careful about what you say because it can stay deep within my life, within someone else's life. I was fortunate in a way that Mom, almost every year that I almost failed in my school, kept on saying, you can do better next year. Every year, just when you see the report, it was like 5, that becomes 6. You can do better. But I failed one year. I went to Bali, and I had a major accident. I was riding a motorbike, and I hit a tanker truck, and my motorbike was smashed by half.
Wow.
In fact, that I actually did not remember what happened. I did not remember 5 days from that accident. Now, you got to think in the context that you are being treated with a major accident in a quite traditional hospital in Bali, Denpasar, back in 1982. So the chance of you being alive, chance of me being not disabled is very remote. So on that time, Mom and Dad was in Kalimantan, and he was told, your son has an accident, and he couldn't fly because there's only about like one flight in a week. So he's got to stay in the village, and Dad was quite a successful businessman. In fact, that he was one of the most, probably the most successful, but you got to put it in the context of the village, right? So,
of course, so it's all relative.
But yeah, but you know, I was alive, and Dad saw me and Mum saw me, and they couldn't recognize me because my face was just distorted, my bones are broken, left and center, but I survived there, and I was sent to Singapore to do checkup, and I was okay. And then I thought for a moment that I must have been spared or saved for a purpose, something greater than me, something that must be larger than me, and I do not know in that time what was that purpose. And but that was almost a split second of, call it Rema or the voice, where it's just you're safe, spared for something greater. You're not just nobody, something greater for you. And this is what I think Stephen Covey talks about, that if you want to change things incrementally, you change the method that you do things. Mm-hmm. But if you want to change things exponentially, like massively, you got to change the way you see things, the paradigm. So what I had is that moment of paradigm shift. What I used to see myself as being nobody, not good enough, I can't compete with everybody else. It's always looking at what I can't do instead of what I can do. Instead of thinking about what I have become, I was always thinking about what I have not become. And now this time I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a go.
And that's where you create this self-fulfilling prophecy after that, where before you're thinking from a negative space and everything is doom and gloom, and you're very pessimistic in your approach. And then as you go through that paradigm shift and your vision looks different and you start to see things from a different lens, you start to just see things completely different, and you start to then attract all of that other positive stuff, I guess, right?
I think you're so right, isn't it? Like, instead of say, it changes things, and to some extent that's also a lesson in life, that sometimes your accident in life could actually be your miracle in your life.
It's your blessing, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like I didn't plan to have an accident in Bali. I didn't want to have an accident in Bali, but I had that accident that almost took my life, but that changes everything in my life. So
changes perspective, right?
I can't claim the credit for it. And then I was put back into a class of the best top students in my school there, and my school was the best schools in my hometown in Surabaya. Was one of the finest. Well, it actually the finest school. So now, when you mix with these people, like who are super smart, and I was super bottom smart, right?
Yeah.
Below us, and you can either become insecure or inspired. But that's something that I learned from there, that the change of environment, the change of people that you're dealing with, people that surround your life, will change you completely. So I see a new paradigm where these kids are saying, oh, well, the teachers are wonderful. I came from a friendship that says, oh, the teachers are hopeless. They don't know how to teach you, but these kids are saying, this is wonderful, this is really good. And I came from a background where my friends before were saying, you don't need to be academically smart to be successful. After all, not every successful people are academically smart. But of course, today I learned you got to be not only academically smart, you got to be street smart, but you can't be street smart and not academically smart, and because you just can't lead. You can't lead people unless you know what they're thinking, right? So anyway, so I thought it was really interesting in how lives begin to change, and so much so, and I thought that all my life is almost like a life of a major setback that I managed to come back. But the comeback story was not really I did it. It was almost given. It's a gifting.
Just like you, I think what you start to appreciate and realise is you've been spared for whatever reason, and no different to you and I had a quick conversation earlier before we started about certain instances of success, and you've got a choice. You can either go tools down and you can just give up trying anymore and just live a retired or semi-retired life and look after a few investments if that's what you choose to do, or you can use your God-given talent and you can make the best part of that. And I think this is where I think in our lives we start to, I guess, come to crossroads. Certain pivotal moments in your life that either drag you in a direction that you choose to go, as opposed to just letting life take you there. So Iwan, tell us a little bit about Crown Group and what makes it so special and how you've built such an amazing business. You know, perhaps some of the key defining angles that you took or thoughts that you had in building this business.
In the snapshot, Crown Group is a company that existed about 24 years. Started with a $5 million capital injection with $5 billion pipeline across Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Los Angeles and Indonesia. So that's a snapshot from residential development, focusing on high density, urban resort development to now developing hotel, the build to rent, Sky Suites, and also the retail under the brand of the Grand Centers that we have there. And it's special because I think we created urban resort. I mean, we create lifestyle. Our buildings are always kind of considered to be iconic. Our buildings are now considered to be probably the best building. I mean, I think I'm being biased there. But I think...
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
I know. Well, we've won about, 30 to 40 awards in the last 24 years. And I've been so fortunate to be the youngest recipient of the Urban Task Force Property of the Year person. And I was also awarded as the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. If I can sum up really the journey of Crown Group the last 24 years, I think if there are three things that kind of drives the Crown Group and everything that we do kind of fits in within that. I have to think that really what drives it in the beginning was about the thinking big and start small. It is always that, I mean, like you do, like I finished my uni here. I wasn't too bad. I was given the award as the best designer. I was the best, with my other friend, we always achieved the highest design, but not in the early year, later on. But it was a struggle in the beginning. But I had this dream to be one day, I wanted to be like John Portman from USA, who designed a hotel building with the atrium in the middle. And I thought if I can just be like that, I'll be really, really happy. But considering the fact that, I work as a kitchen hand before, we are in the new land. And as good as I am, I'm not very local. My language is limited, my network is limited. Mom and dad are not here. Over there in Indonesia, almost everybody in business. Here you start, where's your first client, right? But the thinking big is so fundamental about challenging. And of course now, 24 years later, that thinking big has actually, and looking back, I was quite surprised the fact that, hey, Crown Group is actually one of the leading brands, considering 24 years is nothing. But really starting small, really, and that's an important aspect of the Crown Group.
Small steps.
Just small steps, doing our houses, garages, fences, and the like. Now, and that's almost important, especially for the younger generation today, to learn from that, because the startup, there's a lot of startup companies that raise up $1 billion, $2 billion, just like there's no tomorrow. But I am a fundamental believer that, like the book of Jim Collins, that says that shoot the bullet first and fire the cannonball after. In other words, you do small thing and try to do it, learn about it, the wind, the speed of movement, and the characteristic of what you're shooting. And then when you're ready, you shoot the bigger bullet. So Crown Group is that journey. When we go to USA, we started small. Yes, big vision, small thing. We go to Melbourne, the same thing. The second part of I felt that drives Crown Group is we were driven so much, I think, by passion and not profit only. I'm not saying profit is not important in the business, but it's the first thing that drives Crown Group is the passion of designing great building, building that leaves legacy, building that the residents will enjoy. So every day in the office is a fight, an argument about what makes it great. Now we have a statement. I know a lot of people say don't stop at good, but finish at great. I said no, finish when it says wow. When you don't say it's wow, don't stop. It's simple. If I don't say wow, if you're not, we all are not together in the room and saying wow, we don't stop. Right?
Difference between good and great, right?
Yeah. And if you don't sleep because you got to get to wow, you don't. You just continue to do it, right?
Interesting.
And so but however, that passion is the one that leads to profit many years later because of the consistency of quality design, building services, and being there for your customers, and making sure that the building that they buy are actually profitable in the many years. Location, great design. And of course, in 2013, which is about, 1996, 2013, so about 17 years later, we're starting to build a brand. and we started launching a job, and we sold 100 million in 1 week. The year after, 2014, I sold a job, sold 170 million dollars in just 1 day. The year after, I sold a job, 2015. I sold Infinity by Crown Group, and I launched it in 5 hours. I sold 385 million dollars. I could have sold $1 billion in that time, but what happened was the brand, which is what you stand for, the quality and the like, people starting to buy into that.
You're getting
vision.
momentum.
And people starting to tell their friend, go and buy Crown Group because you'll do well. And I had people flying all over the world coming to buy our product here. I've had my friend flying with a private jet, and he's on the line, waiting on the line. I said, don't you just call me? You can bypass it. But it was that consistency that people know that our product is going to be delivered good. So the passion that drives profit, of course, we've become a very profitable company now. I mean, our hotel Sky Suites in the middle of pandemic of COVID-19 today is hitting 90% occupancy to 100%, despite people are celebrating about 45% occupancy, we're celebrating 90% to 100%. The third one is really, and probably the thing that is the culture of Crown, is the culture of innovation. It's what drives us. We always have us say, look, unless you innovate, you'll die. That's a Peter Drucker word.
You have to stay relevant, right?
Not just relevant, it's ahead of time. Well, it's true, isn't it? Relevant,
Yeah,
but ahead of everyone else. So,
Absolutely, you need to be cutting edge, and you need to. I think staying relevant is moving with at the rate of technology and everything advancing at the rate that it is.
So I travel around
relevance
the world
is everything, right?
To learn, because what people don't understand, as I always said to people, if we just adopt the style today, by the time you finish building, your building is 5 years old. Right? Because it took you 5 years to deliver a building. So you almost have to be 10 years ahead of the thinking of everybody else. When you finish delivering the building, they're starting to say, wow, it's new. It's actually not really. Somebody else is already ahead of us. So that's probably the culture that continued to drive Crown innovation in everything. Graphic design, look, feel, in everything that we say, look, is there any innovation in that thinking there?
So I agree with the innovation piece. At Trafalgar here, we had the same thought a couple of years ago about trying to stay relevant and moving forward with technology. And how do I align, staying relevant in a property industry, and how do I tap into advancing with technology, right? And so for us, it started to make sense to move into the data center space. And as a result, we've now built a pipeline of these data centers and hopefully looking to deliver those. So again, very, very similar to Crown Group, trying to stay innovative and stay ahead of the time. But yeah, awesome achievements.
Multi-talented, Joe.
I've got good people around me, let's say that. We've noticed that you've been a mentor and a guide to a lot of people, and I know that you're inspiring a lot of people, and it's something very important to you. Who was that person in your life?
There's quite a lot, I mean, of course, there's no doubt that our mum and dad are often mentors. They inspire us to do better in our life. But I guess along the way that I was just fortunate enough to come across really, really wonderful people. In the property development section, for instance, I get to know Bob Hamilton, the ex-founder of Murphy. And I just love what he does, and I learn from how he does things. So much so what you see in Crown Group today has a bit of resemblance to what he's done. Bob used to do a building that has an amazing garden. Now, I came from Indonesia, Bali, right? So that's natural for me. I was drawn to that, and I could see what makes him so good. And later on, of course, when I asked him to be on my board, advising me, and the first thing that he came to my office is, instead of teaching me on how to build a corporate company, he said, give me your drawing. And he started sketching up and looking at the drawing and how the rooms look and the layout, the circulation, the step, the detail. That's what makes him so good at it. And later on, I have people like Dr. Quake from Fraser that I get to know. Dr. Quake from Fraser Group, or the former Green Cleave, like, he is an ex-ambassador. He just loves design so much. But the guy is taking development industry in Australia to the next level, to what we've seen before. Everybody else often are bringing a lot more local building, great building, but it's not amazing, right? But Dr. Quake just took the building into the international level by engaging.
Yeah, Central Park is a classic example.
People like John Defoe and people like
live
Norman
buildings.
Foster. He just took. So from the two of them, I learned. In the early day, it was really just client that I respected so much. And
so you like Norman Foster as an architect?
I don't really like it.
You don't?
But I can see he's super clever, right? My architectural style is quite Japanese and Swedish.
Okay.
So line and color and nature is very important for me.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough, when I was only building up maybe about 4 or 5 people company, I came across, and I was introduced by a friend who works for Garuda Indonesian Airline. And he said, I'd like to introduce you to my chairman. So I get to know the man, and the man not only just that he reformed Garuda Indonesia Airline from almost bankruptcy to a company that's profitable. But he also formed he merged 4 banks and formed that into one of the largest national banks in Indonesia.
Okay.
So he became another mentor in the earlier day in my life, and we just play golf. And I actually don't do business with him, but we just respected so much with me. And
Do you still play golf?
Yeah, that's the sort of people that and
Okay.
then along the way, you met people. Well, before he was the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, and you got to play people at this level. And I've often just want to know them, like you're interested about other people's lives, right, Joe?
Totally. I mean,
And
that's why we're talking today,
mentor
right?
like him. Then I said, Tony, what kept you humble? He said, because someone told me, don't forget that the people you met on the way up are the people you met on the way down. So just because you're in the high place right now, just don't forget that one day you may not be there, and someone else is going to rise up higher than you. So that sort of mentoring that kind of teach me about business, architecture, building, that you can go global as a development has actually inspired me so much. So, and there are also spiritual leaders that come across in my life that are just amazing mentor for me. Yeah.
That's amazing. So on the topic of giving, talk to me about this thought or this vision you've had about giving away $1 million. Everybody wants to make $1 million, right? I found it interesting that one of your earliest thoughts was you wanted to give that away. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I don't know where it came from. Joe. I just had a heart to say that one day, if I could build a business big enough that I can give $1 million away, and I would like to give it back to charity and to some extent helping kids who are struggling in their study. Maybe it was part of my struggle in the early day, and I thought this would be a nice thing that I can do now. But you got to put it in context that I thought, look, $1 million was a lot of money, right? I mean, to talk about, I was working in a kitchen hand, but I did it not because I need the money, by the way. I did the kitchen hand because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how kitchens are being done. I wanted to learn how restaurants are being run. I don't need that money. My mom and dad can actually give me the support, right?
Yep.
But I did it despite the fact that after 10 hours of work, you're full of dirt. Your clothes are wet. And this is just really, really ugly. But I wanted to do that, but my thought is that you couldn't give what you do not have, right? And you can't make $1 million and just give $1 million, because that'll be crazy for you. You got to grow the business. But that is almost a vision that drives me. And of course, the many years later, I achieved that goal. And today I'm going to the next level to actually think about setting up fund in perpetuity. Now, for me personally, I mean, I think everyone's doing that. You're doing that, and a lot of people do that. If you can base a business based on this non-selfish kind of goal, it's actually quite rewarding. It drives you, but it doesn't burn you. You know what I mean? Like it drives you, it gives you a vision, it gives you this tenacity to fight back. But the beautiful thing about that is not about you competing against somebody else. The problem that I oftentimes find as a business, if you want to be the largest or the richest man, somebody else is going to be richer than you. No matter how good you are, somebody's going to be better than you. And this, it never stops. But a vision, a business that are driven by kind of selfish kind of goal, or actually motivates, charges us alive, sets us on fire to go for it, and you feel good about it, really.
Yeah, at the sake of sounding a bit cliche, it's all about balance, right? But yeah, look, absolutely it's about giving for me. I think that's what makes it all worth it in the end. But talk to me about, it wasn't until the early 2000s you started to really talk a lot about what you do. And then we had the GFC, and I'm interested to know, what that time was like for you, whether we talk GFC or even COVID, I mean, talk to me about what happened in those two times and similarities, or, how did you manage through those times?
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned that I was really never going public until 2004. The reason for that is I was actually keeping it not low profile, but I actually wanted to make sure that I really love what I do and want to stay there. And if I do go to the media, I want to make sure that we're already get to a size that we're quite happy with. By 2004, we kind of building up about $1 billion portfolio, and I thought now it's time for me to tell the world what Crown Group does, right? So 2004, also the time when the recession of residential market was hitting New South Wales. That was the mining boom. That was actually much more difficult for me than global financial crisis or COVID-19. At that time, I was just doing a single job in Parramatta. We were building 230 units, and I was selling 1 unit per month, and I was selling 30%.
Which site in Parramatta? You know, I'm
Cowper
from
Street,
Parramatta. Oh, in
Harris
Cowper
Park.
Street.
Cowper Street, Harris Park.
Okay, yeah.
So that was a lot. It's a very challenging time. That was a super difficult time, and we were stuck in a building in Ashfield because we bought an office building. We couldn't rent the space, and the interest cost is about $70,000 a month, and we didn't have a lot of money by that time. And in the space of things, I mean, of course, quantity-wise, financial-wise, today's COVID-19 hits us far bigger than that financially, but we're ready for that. In that time, $70,000 a month is a lot of money for us. And the job in Cowper Street just couldn't take off really, Joe. And I was struggling badly, and I woke up with cold sweat in the morning, like 4 a.m. You just wake up and say, shit, you know what to do. What on earth, how are you going to do it really? How do you get out of this one? The project that you have in hands doesn't take off. The project that you already have doesn't sell. So what do you do with all this thing? But I guess time like this is I think you described that as a defining moment in your life. As a defining moment, what do you do? I took it really, I mean, I took just really this word of wisdom that says that do not be weary in doing well, because in due season you will reap. In other words, that if you just keep doing what you do well and just get it better in the right time, you'll reap the benefit of it.
Yeah, it'll work itself out almost.
So instead of panicking about this difficult time, I learned in 2004. Now, so I put this one, not to be boastful about that. When COVID-19 hits us, our hotel portfolio has $100 million borrowing without the capacity to repay. Now we're talking about $4 or $5 million interest. In that time, $70,000 is the whole world for me. $4 or $5 million today, we can handle it. I see that really COVID-19 was far more difficult than Cowper Street. But it's Cowper Street in context, right? But Cowper Street was difficult because I was just learning about to see how the downturn hits you, right? But the same lesson is really that instead of panicking is really whatever you do well, just do it better.
It's interesting how we always find a way through those adverse moments that we have to deal with, and it's interesting that you had to deal with that Cowper Street thing. I think
2004 when 2008 hits, which is the global financial crisis,
GFC,
we were ready for it because we were ready.
You've been through the worst already, right?
We were growing like there's no tomorrow in that time. But when COVID-19 hits, as we all know, this time you can't plan beyond 1 week. You cannot plan your business beyond 5 years. You know, like in the past, my plan is 5 to 10 years. I have my spreadsheet for all my job for the next 5 to 10 years. And I know where the profit is going to come from. When COVID-19 hits you, the whole will shut down. You can only say a week or 2 weeks time now. Most people shut down, during this difficult time. But the same lesson that I learned, just continue to do what you do well and just get better.
I came to the office every day.
Yeah,
I didn't stop,
Well,
and it was actually great. You could drive on the freeway, no traffic.
It was great, yeah.
I'd drive into the office, sit here for hours, just get our stuff done, keep thinking, keep dreaming, keep planning, as we've spoken about.
I stay in the office because I thought it would be unfair for my people to be on the front line, like the hotel and retail, and I'm staying at home. So I thought, no, I am the leader. I've got to be in the office.
And challenges are a part of success. Right, I think you'd agree with that. I don't think there's any successful person that has been able to just do it, smoothly without any challenges. So talk to me about some of the other challenges you might have had outside of the public eye. Because
I think there's a lot, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I think people are just. I'm sure everybody's going to experience the same issue where you deal with insecurity, you deal with the thinking that you might fail in every launch that you do, you deal with family issues, you deal with your kids matter, and things that you don't think can happen to you, and often they hit you at the same time. So it's really that I think it's to learn that sometimes good and bad things happen at the same time, and not one good week, one bad week. No, just good time and not so good time.
It's all good, yeah.
Well, sometimes not so good time. It happened and hit you at the same time. Probably like in the space of my life was the loss of mum and dad. It was mum first and then dad after that was probably the most difficult, probably the most challenging challenge for me, because suddenly you lost them, and then you said, wow, and it does destabilize you. But
how old was your father when he passed?
Well, mum was about 72 and dad was about 75, but unfortunate circumstances, it gets easier, but I think the struggle was always you remember the last moment, so you remember the bad time, and I struggle to relive the good time. So
Okay.
and oftentimes that I think in life is you gotta, but I'm getting better at it. It's not how they finish their life; it's about how they live their life. And I
Look,
think that's something that
absolutely. You
I
can't, you
thought it's
can't, you
something that
can't
I thought
allow
I-
the last
yeah.
moments of difficult times to cloud all the other great stuff. I think, and
Yeah.
that's the challenge, right? I think human nature is challenging, at the best of times, and then, those constant thoughts that that might come across our minds, at the worst times. I think what happens over time is you start to then just realise that there was a hell of a lot more to their life, and we start to celebrate all of the great stuff that
Yeah.
they did with us and for us, right?
And that one of the things that keeps us going is because we want to make them proud, right? Once that's taken, it's what else? Like you can make money, but what's the purpose of it? So it's actually quite interesting when you lose your mum and dad. The very thing that makes you fight and work harder sometimes wasn't about the money anymore. Because in fact, that a few years before mum died, I said, "Dad, mum, I feel like I had everything that I need in my life. Why do I want to fight anymore? I can just settle down." And he said, "No, no, no." The word was like, "If you're gifted, why stop? But just balance up your life." But it's so joyful in a way, seeing mum so proud about their kids. She didn't tell me, but you hear it from auntie and somebody else. Oh, she was talking about you. Oh, that's so nice, to be able to just make them. That has no value to me. And so once that's taken, then what? Do we do it for the business, for the kids, or do we do it for the common? Well, you do that for the family, you do that for the community, but something is missing. So it took a while to recover that.
Yeah, time is a healer, and
Yeah.
and you'll work through that. Did you ever get to a point where you wanted to change direction?
Yes, I felt like probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I felt like maybe I should just stop. But I realized that it's probably when you lose your vision, you lose everything. But not now. But
So what keeps
in
you-
terms
what-
of career, in the younger day, I tried to do a lot of other things. Then I learned that if you're not good, don't do it.
Yeah, stick to what you
Stick
know
to what I
best,
do
right?
well,
Yeah.
and therefore I just.
But what keeps you on track and focused with that end vision?
Because there's a mountain that I want to climb, and that
Okay.
mountain is about putting that fund in perpetuity.
Okay.
What I do in the property development is my passion about doing things architecturally, building a corporate building business, and going public is one of the drive that to make the company corporatized, so that the people that work for us can actually enjoy it together. But that goal is not the end goal. That is actually the tool for me to get to my end goal, which is really building fund in perpetuity.
Let me know how I can help you build that fund if you ever need a hand.
Thank you.
I'm more than
I'm sure
I'm
you
more than
will.
happy to help. I'm going to get to a question you've probably been asked a few times, but what does Iwan define as success?
Good question, isn't it? Just to be me and to do what I enjoy the most is just being successful. And I think I could say that, look, it has been a successful journey for Crown Group to build up a business from nothing to where it is today, to become a brand in the industry. And I think, I consider that I've done what I need to do and can do more by speaking and mentoring a lot of people, whether one-to-one or a group or by the thousands or by the 10,000s. And that's inspiring people. I could consider that. Maybe my next definition of success is about preparing the company to be independent of me. So preparing the leadership
A
within
succession
the company
plan, yeah.
and raising the leaders so they become a corporatization that can actually, the community in a way of that company can build that. I think the next level of success for me is also preparing my 3 kids to be what they want to be in their life. So it's not really trying to follow me. They'd be good if they want to, but it's really to be them. And I think that probably the next level of success to me. If I can get that, I'll be quite satisfied. But if I don't, I've tried and I'm happy.
That's amazing. Not everyone has the benefit of being so clear about their vision, and I suspect there will be people out here listening that might be at a crossroad or they may be stuck with their vision. What would we say to them?
Everything is going to be fine. It's going to come to you when it's time, right? I'll give you these answers in a very long storyline, right, if you don't mind. When I went to China, I dealt with this state-owned enterprise, and they are massive, right? And they gave me this a golden dragons, and they said, here's a gift for you, Mr. Sunito. I said, why is it 5 dragons? Apparently that 5 was the most auspicious number in the Chinese numbers. So it's a lucky number. And I said to him, can I also relate to you that 5 is actually quite a significant number to some people, because 5 is the number of grace. Now the word grace is defined as a gift that you earn without you working on it. In other words, it's given to you and you don't earn, you don't try to do anything, in fact that you don't deserve it, but it's given to you in your life. So what I'm saying to people out there who are struggling often in life is that I think we need to just see the gift that we have in our life rather than not celebrating what we haven't become. Celebrate what we have become, but when the time comes, it'll come to you. In other words, that I was struggling with my school day and I was struggling badly, but I don't celebrate what I was very good at, drawing. I love drawing. I draw aeroplane, I draw anything. And I don't really like mathematics and the like, but of course later on I learned to like it. But there was time where I was struggling, but the gifting that I have, I should celebrate and should do better, didn't come there. Now, I was building the business one at a time, Joe. Like my first year business was about, my turnover is $50,000. Second year was $150,000. Third year is $350,000 turnover. 5 years in a row, there's no profit in the business. I was paying myself $20,000 salary in the first year, $35,000 in the second year. The third year, the only car that I can afford to buy is an old 10 years old Honda Accord, $10,000. But it was funny that in 2004, around that time, I was selling a house, but at the same time, I bought a property in Newington. Now, by that time, I was already 8 years in the business. That one single job gives me the ability to be a 50% of the Crown Group. I was the smallest shareholders when I started the business because I didn't have the money. Mm-hmm. But 8 years later, over time, my shareholders, as they get older, they're saying, look, they want to enjoy the spoil of the business and they want to start moving out. There was a job. They didn't want it. So me and my business partner decided to take it, mm-hmm. but I didn't have the money. But that single job gives me the profit of almost 5 times of the last 8 years' profit of the business, one single job, where I put very little money to do that. And now,
so is that the mixed-use building opposite the shopping centre?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now, that was not my hard work. That was not because I was clever. It was given to me a year before, and a friend of mine was saying to me, go and buy this thing. And I said, and I give it to my staff, and they said, it's too hard. The year after, my same friend, this one single agent from Rhodes by the name of John Cho, he said to me, no, Iwan, you buy this one, you're going to make money here. And I said, I look at it and I said, hang on, this is a gold mine. Because by this time, you understand architecture. I did architecture. I look at the whole basement, and anyway, I could just say I could double up the whole thing.
Yeah,
then I said to them, look, I said, if I give you a signed contract, will you honor the deal? Now, the funny thing is, Joe, the property that I signed the contract, 6 o'clock, I give it to the owners of the land. 30 minutes later, somebody offered them about $1 million more, 10% more than what I offered them. And they took my deal. That same deal puts the Crown Group to where it is today and gives me the 50% of the ownership. Now, Did I plan for it? No, it was given. Did I actually plan for the accident in Bali? No, it was given. Did I actually plan to be, among the top 5 students that one of them becomes my girlfriend, later on, and you learn from them, So the lesson in life, if you're struggling, date a smart girl or smart guy or be surrounded by people who are wise. But it wasn't really planned, and often that you don't work for it. But I'm not saying that we don't work hard, but I just feel like there's always hope somewhere out there.
So basically what you're saying to our listeners today is, if you're at that crossroad, sit back, relax, and trust the process.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary?
I think do what you can do, let the rest go. So my routine is simple. When I stressed out, I wake up in the morning, I go on an exercise. I go jump into my pool. 30 minutes later, I'm fresh, I'm ready to fight. Constantly, every day. Do the simple thing and just go out on a holiday and just have a break, because sometimes you got to be outside and thinking about it rather than being stuck there.
And the answer will come, right?
Yeah, and then the lesson in life to me is that do what you can do and just do it better. So if I'm good at, in that time, I'm good at marketing, I'm good at branding, I'm good at PR kind of thing, I'm good at the design. So I just continue to go and climb for the next step.
Stick to what you're good at and trust the process.
Trust the process that it's going to be good at the end. of
Awesome.
the day.
Awesome. Iwan, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed the discussion again, and I hope there's many of these discussions we're going to have in the time ahead. I'll just let the listeners know that if they've enjoyed hearing from Iwan Sunito today, you can dive a little deeper into his lessons. He's actually written a whole book around it, Borneo to Bloomberg, 13 Principles of Success. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that just before we go?
It's actually a short story in 13 chapters that I made it in 9 days, and I put that 13 principle, but that 13 principle is actually a topic in itself. I mean, I've delivered the speech around it, but I made it in such a way that it's so easy to read. You can almost read the whole book in one day. So, for instance, the first principle in life is always begin with the end in mind, always begin with a vision.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I was struggling before was because I have no vision, and we'll all learn, right, in a way that big vision, big action, no dream, no action.
Yeah. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Yeah, in a way that it is about the end, and then second thing is about mapping out how do you get there, and how do you map out things that you do not know. Simple, just talk to people that's been there, and just talk to people like Joe, talk to people like, just ask for mentoring. There's a lot of people, good people that are willing.
That sounds funny. Talk to Joe. Okay.
Talk to Joe, right? And that thing is like surround yourself with the best people. Is because, I mean, there's a lot of principle that I kind of wrote in there, and quotes from some of the greatest speakers out there.
Sounds amazing. I'm going to try to get a copy of that book. I'm told you can find it on Amazon amongst other outlets. So check out our website for more details in the show notes from this episode. Iwan, once again, thank you. It was an awesome conversation, and hope to talk to you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, available wherever you get your podcasts. Or to talk to Joe, visit trafalgar.com.au. That's TRIFALGA.com.au.